welcome to The Point. It is Tuesday, September 14th, 2021. Thank you to those of you joining us on the GBN Grenada Broadcasting Network's Facebook page, the Grenada Broadcasting Network's YouTube channel, the website www.gbn.gd, GBN TV channel 7, 11, and 20. Good morning to the listeners of Classic 105.5, 105.9, and Hot 98.5, 98.7, and the folks joining us on Party Grenada and Go to Fet Facebook pages. Always a pleasure to have you. Let's start this morning's To The Point program. Joining me virtually this morning is an economist. Dr. Curlan Gilchrist is my guest this morning. We're having a little bit of issues with his camera, but it's more the message that we want to hear, and I think most of us can picture Mr. Gilchrist's face. So good morning, Dr. Gilchrist, and thank you very much for joining us on To The Point this morning. Appreciate you, sir.
Good morning, Blossom. It's great to be with you this morning. May the Lord continue to bless you and give you grace and peace, and to everyone in this country. May God continue to bless us.
Thank you very much, and blessings onto you as well. Mr. Gilchrist, before we start, Krista, just check the GBN email. Right. So, Mr. Gilchrist, let's get into it. As an economist, I want to look this morning at the economic implications of the COVID-19 pandemic. We have been dealing with a global health pandemic for the last almost 2 years as it stands. We're in September, almost 2 years. And the implications of financial fallout from the pandemic and the measures that have been put in place to curb the spread of the virus, we are also feeling it here in Grenada. So let's generally look at that. What sort of implications have come from the COVID-19 pandemic, including the measures we've put in place, as well as how it has affected worldwide situations?
But Blossom, I think the information is well known of the economic implication. I mean, countries have seen a massive downturn in economic activity. I think if you look at the IMF figures for last year, for example, 2020, I don't recall a country that have seen any positive economic growth. So we have a massive downturn. That's what 2020, and in going into 2021, some countries like the Caribbean presented an economic climate as though we're into a recovery. Remember, even in Grenada, we projected a 6% growth and a whole set of stuff on the presumption that we out of this and we will recover. So countries rush into economic stimulus packages and all of that. But we have seen that has not happened, because the fundamentals with the economic system has not been addressed. And I want to focus a little bit about that. We pretend as though it's business as usual. And Blossom, I want to say that if a patient is sick, from my own common sense, you think about stabilization. You want to stabilize, and then you focus on recovery. But I'm getting the feeling that driven by profit and enterprise and interest, we want to move beyond stabilization and want to start about recovery. We have to focus on economic stabilization as a prerequisite and as a basis for laying a foundation for economic recovery. And I think we are missing it. I'm hearing too much about stimulus and nothing about how do we stabilize the economics. How do we stabilize livelihood? Once we get that done, we can focus on the rest. And I think we need to get that. Otherwise, the consequences will continue, and we will spend a long time in the economic doldrums with devastating consequences, not on our pockets, but on lives. So it's not just about livelihood, it's about lives, Blossom. And this is the message I want to get across this morning.
How can we adapt to what's currently taking place in Grenada? And even when we travel regionally, internationally, how can we adapt to what's taking place without having, let's say, the spending power that we've had 2.5 years ago?
We can adapt in that we got to focus on what is essential. So, of course, the advice is that travel must be essential. And if traveling has to confine to essential travel, it means that travel for leisure and for entertainment will take a hit. So we have to admit that. All right, and therefore our approach to tourism would be different. Traveling will continue to be central. And as long as travelers continue to be central and countries are warning their citizens that want to engage in traveling, about where to go and not to go, and precaution, the whole idea of tourism and how we resuscitate the tourism industry will have to be rethink in a different form and fashion.
Avoided? Or could measures have been put in place to maybe cushion the effects of the economic fallout from the pandemic?
It could have been avoided.
So we didn't put measures in place in the beginning. So what can we do now? And I'm talking from the perspective of members of the public, the ordinary man and woman, as well as from an administrative point of view? What can be done to help us bounce back quicker?
Right. So, very good question. And Blossom, as I answer that question, there are some things we got to keep in mind. One, we got to be honest. And as we ask for unity, we have to have, and none of us in this for the fame or the glory. None of us going into this thing so that at the end of the day, we could slap our chest and say, we have done it. It's not about that. If we have those things in our minds, we are going to fail, Blossom. So as we think about what we're going to do, there are some things that has to happen with us as a for life and for every life. Honesty and sincerity. We can't see party colors in this thing. These things have to be settled up front as we pull together a national response to what we are facing. All right, as a national response. So there are things we got to do now. But remember what I said. There are some things we had to fix ourselves before we start fixing others, right? Remember that. So we're talking about our national response. And as we think of a national response, we have to mobilize the people. There has to be a massive mobilization of all the experts in the area of health and health-related industry as we come together to put a program together to solve this problem. And from there, we move to community mobilization and community activities. Organized from a national independent perspective. We had to clear the barriers and hurdles as we confront the people. So we're seeing the problem and we're not seeing the politics. We just had to see the problem. So it would mean as we go forward, the messengers and the message would have to change. Up to today, we still have the same messengers. You want to change the message that don't change, they go hand in hand. We need credibility of the actors as we go further to build hope and aspiration, hope to the people. So I'm asking for a national mobilization of all the resources we have to come together, bind ourselves together to solve this problem. And we got to lead by example. All right? And I think you would see not just saying how I did tell all this should I take this and all should I take that, so that will happen. So in other words, the elderly get hit. Well, I did tell them this and I did. No, Blossom, no. Put that aside. What can we do to build hope? All right? And this is a war. And I have to admit, Blossom, in a war, you have casualties. But at the end of the day, we have to look at the greater good of this country. So we are going to come out strong as a people, but we got to do what we have to do to melt down the obstacles and the barriers and come out strong as a people. But we have to get to the level of community mobilization. And a lot of that has started in terms of the mobile testing sites and all of that. And of course, easy access to testing and vaccination. We got to focus resources on making that easy. And I'm saying, I know the financial authorities have been saying that if we didn't have the surpluses, we could not have right through a lot of stuff. So I'm taking the same story to say, with the fiscal surpluses that we have, let's see how we could direct some of these to doing the things so that we put the people on a good health path. All right? And a surplus may not mean savings in a bank, but it may mean your ability to mobilize resources. And I think that is what I'm interpreting a surplus to mean. Your ability to mobilize resources. And I'm saying now is the time to use our ability and our ingeniousness to mobilize resources to ensure that we fix the issues we have in the health system, all right? And to restore our people to a level of health so that productivity would be able to be restored as we begin the process of rebuilding the economy.
But the argument can be given that the surplus that you're speaking of, we want to save it for a bigger or a greater emergency.
Awesome. It reminds me of a story in the Bible where this rich man, he did so well and he made provision for his pension and he slapped his chest and said, "What? I'm going to enjoy life." And the next day he's a dead man. The issue is now, all right, and do what we have to do now. We don't know the future, but we know the present. And let us do what we can do in the present to help us in the future.
Let's take a quick break, Mr. Gilchrist, and then we're going to come back and continue the discussion. We are speaking with Dr. Curlan Gilchrist. We're looking at the economic implications of the COVID-19 pandemic. To the point, we'll be right back.
The Hero CPL T20 is back. Catch all the smashing action from St. Kitts and Nevis, August 26 to September 15
on GBN.
Play. Looking for that injection of vibes and energy, of course. Well, I've got just that. Hi, my name is Gary, Mr. Smooth, and I'm inviting you to join me on the Hot Morning Show on Hot 98.5, 98.7 FM. Weekdays, Monday to Friday, 6 to 10 in the morning. I've got a healthy dose of your favorite and most infectious hits sampled with information, news, laughter, and all the other ingredients that go into making the hottest morning show on the radio. The Morning Heat. And while you're at it, don't forget to hit us up on WhatsApp, 435-7517. We've got topics, we've got discussions, calls, voice notes, and so much more. But I can't tell you everything. You gotta tune in. The Hot Morning Show on Hot FM 98.5, 98.7 with yours truly, Gary, Mr. Smooth. Kaboom!
Feel good facts.
Help prevent cold and flu by washing your hands with soap and water for at least 20 seconds. That's the time it takes to remove most germs. No soap and water? No worries when you've got alcohol-based hand sanitizer.
Hey folks, you're invited to tune in to Grenada Music to the World program hosted by Eugene Gittens on Saturday mornings from 10 a.m. to 12 noon on Classic Radio 105.5, 105.9, Hot FM 98.5, 98.7, GBN TV and all their social media platforms. The only totally local music program in Grenada, representing all genres of music. So it's Green's Music to the World on Saturday mornings from 10 a.m. to 12 noon on GBN with the music icon himself, Mr. Eugene Gittens. See you then.
Five things you need to know about self-isolation. Stay home. If you are told to self-isolate, it means staying at home, not going to work, school, or other public places, and you should not have any visitors. Separate yourself. If you live with others, then you need to stay in a well-ventilated bedroom with the door shut. If you have to share a bathroom, then use it after everyone else. Don't share towels and toiletries, as this may put others at risk. Call ahead. If you develop symptoms such as a fever or cough, then seek advice first by calling the Ministry of Health's hotline at 538-4787 or 458-4787. Please do not show up at a medical center or hospital, as this may put others at risk. Take care with waste. If you test positive, your waste should be double bagged and disposed of separately. Create a buddy system. If you live on your own, you can plan with friends and family to check in with each other and run essential errands if one becomes sick. Once sick, they should leave groceries on the doorstep. Why it's important. COVID-19 COVID-19 causes a mild illness for 4 out of 5 persons. Self-isolating will help protect the older generation and those who may have underlying health problems from getting infected.
Welcome back to The Point. We're speaking with economist Dr. Curlan Gilchrist. We're looking at the economic implications of the COVID-19 pandemic. Mr. Gilchrist, speaking of, let's specifically look at pharmaceuticals, at the industry and how these financial implications can affect the industry, and what can we do, government do, to see that industry does not suffer.
Yes, Blossom, that's a critical one. And as I said, as we look at how we deal with the fallout from the economic situation, you have to take an industry approach to it. All right? And I like the fact that you raised that, because as you know, there are many other health issues that affect the country, and not just Grenada, but most Caribbean islands. Diabetes, hypertension. So we have a number of other chronic disease. What we want to prevent is what we call COVID plus. We don't want that COVID plus situation. We want that just a COVID situation. So as it is now, what the government should be doing now is looking at the whole supply and demand of pharmaceutical / medication, and to ensure that there is a meeting with the major players in the private sector to ensure that there is no disruption in the supply and availability of these critical medications that are needed for the population. All right, so, and to assess inventory and whatever support they need, whatever support the pharmaceutical industry needs, and other players involved, whatever support they need from the government to ensure that at least there's a continuous supply and availability of these products. Bearing in mind too that, the whole issue of demand and supply, so you want to keep a track on prices and make sure there is no price gouging, right? So this is something that is a conversation that must be going on now, all right? Because as we know, with the economic fallout, businesses, they are meeting payroll and so on, but if there is no sales and not many shopping days and all of that, eventually the business would not be able to sustain their payroll. So that has been done in the past, so disposable income would be affected. So that's a second point. The conversation has to be with the private sector on anticipating any kind of income support that may be warranted, especially for what I call the priority priority economic activities. You have to have that conversation going. We have to start having this conversation in anticipation of a prolonged effect of the virus. But I'm very concerned about the pharmaceutical industry, because I just want to make sure that the key medication are available, accessible. I know they are, given the global issue of the pandemic, you could have supply disruption, and procurement could be an issue in terms of delays and all of that. So I think there has to be a bringing up the minds to ensure that is there. Because if the population don't have access, and not just access, if there are shortages, and when you have shortages, you have prices going up. If we don't control that element, then that could spiral into other implications that you don't really want. So I'm advocating that this is a kind of consultation the government should be engaged in, looking at the key sector, the key aspect of population issues, and meeting with the key stakeholders and identifying what they need in order to have minimum availability of services. That is the kind of consultation and conversation that we need to have. All right, so it's not something about, pie in the sky about what you want to see for the budget next year and all of that. It's not about that now, where you want to see or where you don't want to see. If you could see, by the way, right? That is not the kind of conversation. you need that kind of conversation with the key sector. So I just mentioned the pharmaceutical industry. As a critical industry, we must not underestimate. I want to make sure that minimizes its ability to do what it has to do. So these are some of the support structures we had to start working on now, Blessed, and engage in to making sure that that we are able to stabilize. I'm talking about stabilization measures, not recovery, just stabilization measures as a foundation for the preparation of recovery measures. So that just the pharmacy, and you can think of other industries. We could talk about food, the food industry, because you got to feed our people. And the conversation now is not just about food availability, but the right food. And the messages coming out of the for the pandemic now about the kind of foods now we should be eating, all right, and fruit, and the vitamins and so on. That messaging has to go along with any effort in the agricultural sector now. So we got to focus what we are doing at preserving health and restoring health and strengthening health. So agriculture is not just eating what you want, when you want, how you want, but what is necessary now. So again, the conversation has to have with the agricultural sector and those persons involved in the production of food. All right? The conversation has to be had with them because they want to guarantee that. All right? If we can't produce it, we have to acquire it. If we have to acquire it, where the money will come from. All right? So we start looking at inventory. Where we are now with oranges, tomatoes, lettuce. What the stock levels are now? And what are the likelihood of we having a shortage going forward? We have to start thinking about these things as we engage industry, as we engage people, so that we could take these measures to stabilize as a basis for recovery. So these are the kind of conversation I'm saying we should be having that are realistic, practical, and it's all aimed at people and ensuring that there is that livelihood would continue. Because if there is no life, you don't have an economy. If you don't have a people, you don't have an economy. People first and then economy after, not the other way around.
But speaking of people, the same people are cash trapped. They are feeling the personal effects of the COVID-19 fallout, the implications, financial fallout. How can we adjust while paying attention to what we need with the little, if any, cash that we have at the moment?
I'm sure, Blossom, you and I and most people are looking at this same thing. How can we adjust with the little cash we have? And if this thing continue, the little cash will go down to zero. All right? So we have to do what we have to do to maintain the little cash. So some semblance of activity has to continue to maintain cash because income support is not a permanent thing. It can't go on forever. Even in the United States, when they had income support to making sure that landlords don't take away their tenants, that was for a period. And while they had that measure in place, other things were done to get the economy back on track. So I'm saying the little cash we have to ensure that it remains. So I suspect something has to be done to maintain that little cash. So one thing that we have to do is that people in the rental industry, those who rent, we have to find some way to at least they are not able to maintain the payments of their rent. The food supply, that will have to be a massive mobilization effort. I know government have a lot of estates and there are things that can grow and you get them in three months. So that food that can be, from planting to harvest could be over 3 months, right? So there are things that we could do. And because poverty, as you know, would increase as a result of the pandemic. Those who are on the poverty line, we push below, and those who are a little on top, we push down to the poverty. So I know for a fact that poverty will increase. But I don't want to focus on that. We have to focus on how do people survive. And I'm saying that that we have to start doing things for ourselves. We have to start being self-sufficient. We call it do it yourself. And we have to see more of that. We can't just show up. We have to start doing things that would prevent us from spending our money. Yeah? Yeah, do things that prevent. So in other words, Blossom, a simple thing like cut your yard yourself. But then you could tell me that by me not cutting my yard, I was creating employment by giving somebody else a job, right? But what would happen is just a rearrangement of activities. That is all I'm saying. There are things that we have to start doing to keep our expenses down and to avoid spending. All right? Because the savings we have at some point would not be able to meet all the expenses and would dry up. All right? And would dry up. And you know what happening with everybody running to the politicians for something. Well, that could be a problem we created, and we have to deal with it now. So I want to advise the politicians that don't get fed up with people when they keep knocking at your door. All right? They always have that expectation. Yeah? So don't get fed up with them, but try to see your best you could help them. We had a problem, so we have to deal with it.
That brings to mind government's stimulus package that they rolled out last year, and I can't remember if they started the stimulus this year as well. But what did you think about it, specifically the industries that were targeted or that received the assistance, how it was rolled out, and as they get ready for the next one or they start the next one?
That's my point. What are you stimulating? I mean, what are you stimulating? That's the question. And whether or not the stimulation is something that is sustainable. You know, if you plant corn blossom and it after it germinates, don't take care of it after that. What happens? It dies, not so? And if the stimulus is not properly targeted, a lot of it don't have to be recovery, you know. It could be stabilization, not necessarily recovery. So I while I understand the stimulus package as an economist myself, having worked at the Ministry of Finance, I understand the intention, but I'm saying it's not properly calibrated and is not innovative in its components in addressing some of the fundamental weaknesses of the system to strengthen them. So it's a broad brush, yeah. But I felt it could have been more that resources could have been more innovatively tailored for what I call industry strengthening and buffering industry, as opposed to telling somebody come and borrow money to expand. You go and borrow money to expand your services, where the demand is, and then you have to pay back that. So the next day, you're going asking for a moratorium, and the cycle continues. It's not like that. That should have been so reconstituted in an innovative way to address some other fundamental impediments and things that are necessary for sustained business activity. So it's not just expansion, because expansion could be short-lived, right, and unsustainable. That's not what they want. So there's no. So it was. It's like you shouldn't. These are things you shouldn't rush into. It requires a lot of thought, a lot of number crunching and thinking. Don't just rush into it because it sounds good and it appears as though you're solving the problem, and no. I have to give a lot of thought to these things.
Let's now go to our viewers and listeners who may have comments and questions for Mr. Gilchrist. Let me see. There was a comment on Facebook, I believe the first one that I saw this morning. Somebody on Facebook says, surplus from the end of 2019 we have been using already, so all of that is not there. That's in relation to your comment about using the surplus to help our health system or health industry. Most of it is not there.
But just let me just comment on that. I was making a more fundamental point, and I was saying that surplus also means that you have the ability to mobilize resources. You have the ability to. And so I'm not just concerned with having the actual cash. I'm more concerned about government's ability to mobilize resources to attend to its development needs. That is what is important. And a lot of times when a country gets into structural adjustment program, what actually happens, the IMF is saying, look, you can't pay your bills. So we got to restructure you so that we give you the ability to pay your bills. Right? And when you have a surplus, you have more leverage in dealing with issues, cash or no cash. Right? You make cash or the ease to which you can get cash. And I'm saying that the government is saying that they are into that position of surplus. And therefore, I anticipate that a lot of it would look towards economic stabilization, not just economic recovery.
Let me go to a caller. Good morning, caller.
Oh, good morning to you. And how are you today?
Not too bad.
Good morning to Mr. Gilchrist.
Good morning, sir.
I know you're one of the better economists in Grenada because we spoke some years ago. Every single thing you say, that is Bible. And you answer all the questions that will be asked of you. It's already answered. That we go into a lockdown. We go into a shutdown. You see, over the years, I want to be brief, but over the years, what we did not do, and you make the point, our concern should be people. And I'm saying that. People's development, economic development for sustainability. Now, we did not, over the years that I know, I have not traveled. I work with private company and government. Over the years that I know, my life in Grenada, no government, and I'm saying no government, have really attempted to develop the citizenry economically so that they will have the finances needed in this time. So that is what's staring us in the face, because we did not position our people to give back to us. That's the reason why we have to give them what we don't have. But if we continue to do that and people are in a position where they cannot spend, what we hope to get to give will not be there. So it is a very serious, and you says sometime we shouldn't say we said, but yes, in my discourse with every single boy from the Prime Minister down, I had been warning that this country is going to a lockdown and the population is on the extinct. I have been saying, and what we had to do was to pay attention to the economy as it relates to creating commerce and jobs and good wages so that people will be in a position to battle out these times. We did not do that. But the question we're not asking, we're pushing people here and everywhere to take the vaccine, but I'm not hearing somebody saying, look, this virus was not supposed to be here. And those people who create the virus should be held accountable. They should have been in prison right now, right? But we're asking of them right now, and I'm asking of them, and I'm asking of our leaders, take a position paper to the IMF, the World Bank, and the United Nations, asking them to take responsibility for what they brought to our shores.
Okay.
And to pay every single citizen from 18 years up $10,000 or $5,000 a month consistently for the next 20 years to help us to stem the tide and to survive. That's what we have to do right now.
Thank you very much, caller. Mr. Gilchrist?
Yeah. I thank the caller for that comment. I think I agree with them 120%. Yeah. And last time I just want to bring one issue of national health insurance and pension. Now these are direct people issue, health and pension. All governments have failed to address it and find excuse. Right now, there's an excellent initiative at really getting this health system going, NHI. Again, the impression is that there is no money for it. You see the problem I have? You see the problem? There is no money for it. The pension issue, which has to do with disposable income over time, and giving the elderly some kind of confidence that at least they could meet their basic needs after they retire. It's not seen because it's seen as a spending issue where the government will get the money from. But who are the government? And you see, these issues, and I'm not laying the blame to any one particular government, but over time, we have failed. The NHI failed to get off the ground. It failed. And look at, here, nobody talking about NHI now. And the pandemic is not causing us to look at NHI. We're looking at everything else except that. Everything else except that. And that was aimed at putting an institutional framework together to deal with our health issues going forward. That's what NHI is all about. A health institutional infrastructure and system and so on that will adhere to help our people. It's on the back burner. It's on the back burner. We don't have resources to do that. But we're fighting symptoms, we're fighting other issues now, and the fundamental issues are not being addressed. And I'm saying that I'm hoping that one of the lessons we learned out of this pandemic is the need to put certain institutional and infrastructural things in place for the next one, because more will come. More will come. And I would like to have a session with you, Blessed, where I talk about health, the environment, and economics. Health, the environment, and economics. And I'm saying that if we don't pay attention to the environment and what we do to the environment, we have more stuff coming that attack life, the breath of life. That's what the virus is attacking, the breath of life. Yeah? That's what it's attacking. If we don't pay attention to the environment, all right, and looking at how the environment affects health, then the economics, not the other way around. Not the economics and the environment first, then the economics. We are not laying a foundation so we are able to withstand the onslaught of any further pandemic. So I'm making a plea for a reset, a rethinking, a melting of ideas, and a rearrangement of the political structure that would support people's initiative and people's development.
There's a question on the YouTube. Somebody on YouTube asked, hold on, I'm making sure it's on YouTube. Right. If we can feed ourselves, what worries would we have? Everything else is surplus. Self-sustainability should be the focus, but we're busy trying to be a first world country on 133 square miles. Mr. Gilchrist?
Yeah, that's correct. But we have to not just feed ourselves, right? Consumption should not be based on just the present. We have to invest so we can consume later on. And I suppose that's what the caller, the person is referring to. Yes, we have to feed ourselves, but you know what it is, Blossom, to feed a greedy person? Eh? So saying feeding is one thing. What about greed and the control of appetite and abuse and waste? Those things have to be part of the equation of feeding yourselves. When you need 2 meals a day, why eat 3? You're not adding value to the body. So when we talk about feeding ourselves, we have to put it in context. And there are some other disciplines that goes along with feeding ourselves. As I was saying, it's a challenge to feed greedy people who cannot be satisfied. So that is the equation. Yes, we will feed ourselves, but people must know what is satisfactory feeding and what is eaten today in an amount that you will have to eat tomorrow.
Good morning, caller.
Hi, good morning, Blossom. Good morning, Mr. Gilchrist. Ron Reddit here, your former student. I just want to say that I'm following the conversation. As it relates to COVID-19 in terms of the economic response and all these other things that is required, clearly in my view, we cannot be doing the same thing over and over. I have just one question for Brother Gilchrist. As it relates to this reliance upon GDP and just to achieve growth, how much did that created a false sense in the end in terms of the impact of COVID? Of course, globally, all economies got hit by COVID, and many are still struggling to recover. But our 40-something years of independence, after that, how much this reliance and built upon the myth about tourism, construction, how much these things contributed to our situation that we are facing now? And I just want to add a specific comment. Now, I am taking very strong offense with people who believe that we ought not to criticize the authorities' response to COVID-19. I think that more should have been done. We had ample time in the sense that it was going on worldwide. We were seeing examples, and there were things that we could have done. Imagine at the 99th hour, we did not yet have a facility to house over 50 patients who come down with COVID-19. This is a serious concern. And when the authorities make pronouncements economically in terms of budgets and so on, we see massive spending to repurchase grenades. We see spending in the depushing program, 14 million. We see massive amount of construction projects, fixing roads, etc. These things were required, but in terms of juggling or making the decision between ensuring that you up the health and you increase nursing assistance, that sort of thing, it lacked, in my view, a clear direction. And it shows that what we are more concerned about is putting plaster on wounds and not necessarily addressing our fundamental problems. So that's my issue. I have exhibited symptoms, I want to say lastly, and I am still awaiting a test. I did call, I followed the procedure. My other members of my family did test negative, but we did experience some symptoms. I am still up fever, etc. I'm still awaiting the test, and I think that the nurses, they are trying their best, but the structure of the system is not working. So thanks. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you very much, Brother Ron. Mr. Gilchrist?
Yeah, well, Brother Ron is one of my students, you know. So I'm in the business of education, you know. Blossom.
I can contest. I can attest.
You have a taste of that yourself?
Yes, boss. Twice.
Yeah. So but the caller is hitting something there. I just want to say the way the world is calibrated, that you find economic managers having to, in order to attract resources and investment, you know, have to show that the balance sheet of the country is in a certain way. So that's why I just want to take a quick reference to when we had the financial crisis. You know, when we had the financial crisis in America the last time, a lot of companies that went belly up were showing healthy financial statements, you know. When you look at the books, we're looking good. And on that basis, people lend you money, but they don't know the undercurrent. So we say we have growth, and that is unnecessary because development partners like to know the country is growing. But what are the microeconomic issues that are facing the country? And when you get there, you realize that the growth is hollow. It's really, really, really hollow. And so they change the language to start talking about, you might hear job-rich growth and sustainable growth to try to nice it up. But the problem is that in the capitalist system that we're in, with the loss for money and greed, and investors put money in so that they can get a return. I can't blame them. It's not about love, it's about return on investment. And if you get carried away as an economic manager with these things, then the fundamental issues of the people and basic things that would help your people grow and develop would get left. So I'm not surprised. So it's hard, it's tough. And I know the issues with economic managers to attract investment and satisfy the investors' needs while attending to the needs of their own people. It's not easy, but they got to be strong-willed. And people have to respect the sovereignty and aspiration of a people. They have to respect that. And once we could get that locked down, I think we are on our way to carving out something good for Grenada. But we have to get to that point. But I think all is not lost. I think God gave us a unique country, unique people, with gifts and talents and resources that could solve our problems. So we have it within us to do what we have to do to survive. And Grenada will continue to be Grenada in the next 20, 30 years. It will continue. The question is, we have to do what we have to do to ensure that there's a foundation for the next generation. We don't want them to question us when they get to, later on and say we should have done this and we should have done this. So let's do what we can as a people. Yeah?
Let me go to WhatsApp. Somebody on WhatsApp asks, do you think government is allocating scarce financial resources to the varied competitive government activities? Mr. Gilchrist?
Well, I don't know what I mean. Well, when I say competitive government activities, I mean, of course, all ministries compete for resources. All right? And that's the whole idea of budgeting. Yeah, everybody make the demands, but somebody had to make a decision on what is priority now. All right? As I said, we got to restrain the greedy while we attend to the needs of the needy. We got to have that balance. We are humans. So yes, but I also think that one of the ways going forward is government is too involved in economic activities, and we have to find a way to lessen government involvement in the economic activity, because it brings a lot of issues. They have an advantage, and they have a lot of stuff, right? I would like to see a expansion of the private sector activities. Of course, and government would have a more regulatory role, but I would really love to see that. But government is too involved, and that's why all the pressure fall back on them. We have to find a way of expanding activity, right, at the level of the private sector. And citizens, when I say private sector, I mean everybody else except government. We have to find a way to do that and lessen government involvement. They are their hands are in everything, and they have an advantage, right? Because they control the purse. So I would like to see that as a model going forward. And when you do that, it sounds like, oh, you want to expand the private. Yeah, but what you're actually doing is helping people and teaching people to take responsibility for their livelihood. We have to get there where people are being taught to take responsibility for their livelihood. That does not mean they're depending on government for a job. So you're debush in the morning and you're going to do another job in the afternoon, or you're a top civil servant, you retire, getting a good pension, you're going to take a job chairing this body and that body and chairing that and all over the place. We got to move away from that. Right? And let opportunity be created for young people. Opportunities for management, leadership opportunities, under the guidance of the senior people. And I think we're going to do well. We're going to do well. We got to trust our people and have faith in our people. Got to build faith in our people.
And that's a good place to end. Thank you very much, Mr. Gilchrist, for being our guest this morning. 30 seconds, final thoughts.
No, well, I think I've said it all, and I just want to wish us well as we band our belly together, as we fight this virus. And we are doing that so that we all will survive. We are not doing it so that we can slap our chest and say, we have done it. All right? And I think as a Christian nation, we ask God for help. And more importantly, Blossom, I just want to say, Let's use wisdom and knowledge. Let's combine wisdom and knowledge as we fight this virus with wisdom and knowledge. And I think we combine these two, we're going to save a lot of lives. Wisdom and knowledge.
Well said. Thank you very much, Mr. Gilchrist. Enjoy the rest of your day and continue to stay safe, sir.
Thank you very much, Blossom.
All right.
Blossom, you look great today, man. I'm happy to see you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Have a good day.
All right, good.
Economist Dr. Curlan Gilchrist, we thank him so very much for being our guest this morning, and thank you viewers and listeners for tuning into the program. Always appreciate it. I know there are questions that I haven't gotten to yet. There was a question posed by, I think it was Peter on the Facebook, that I ran out of time and didn't have time to ask. Hopefully we'll have somebody else on the program future and that you can be able to ask that question once again. It's now time for us to end to the point. We are going to join this morning's post-cabinet briefing, which will be facilitated by Minister of Health Nicholas Steele, Acting Chief Medical Officer Dr. Sean Charles, as well as Dr. Mayana Charles and Dr. Taisha Donald. The four of them are on the list to facilitate post-cab this morning, which starts in just about 2.5 minutes. Enjoy the rest of your day. And for you cricket lovers, following post-cab, then we will join this morning's CPL semi-final taking place between defending champions Trinbago Knight Riders and the St. Lucia Kings, which features Grenada's Andre Fletcher. Kings won the toss and chose to bat, so we will join the match at the end of post-cab. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday. I'll be back tomorrow morning, God willing, and let's now get ready to join post-cab with Minister Steele, Dr. Charles, Dr. Donald, and Dr. Charles once again. Two Charleses. Enjoy the rest of your day, everybody. Bye-bye.